I always liked the quiet. It's in the silence that the world reveals itself naked, raw, honest. No need for small talk or fake smiles. Just the hum of the air conditioner and the whisper of my own thoughts. Most people can't stand silence because it forces them to listen to themselves. But not me. I thrived in it. I needed it. I lived in it. The candy company was my father's idea. Dean's Sweets. Sounds innocent, right? Children love candy, and I loved watching them come in with their sticky fingers and shy smiles. I was always the friendly man behind the counter, handing out free samples, winking at the mothers, joking with the boys. They trusted me. That's what made it so easy. But the candy was just the surface. The real sweetness was something else. Something darker. It started slow, as these things always do. I remember the first time the thought came into my head. I was 15. I watched a boy from the neighborhood swim in a pond behind our house. His skin glistened under the sun. He didn't see me watching. That was the first flicker. A spark, but a spark needs oxygen. It needs fuel. And over the years, I fed it. By the time I was in my 30s, the candy shop had become more than just a business. It was a mask. Behind it, I built something else, something no one saw. A place where silence reigned. A place where I had control. Total control. I found the house in Pasadena. It was small, unassuming. A corner lot with a garage out back, and neighbors who kept to themselves. Perfect. I moved in. And I brought my tools: plastic sheeting, nylon rope, plywood, a wooden box just big enough for one. I called it the playroom. That's what it was to me. A sanctuary, a workshop, a temple. You're probably wondering how someone becomes me. That's the wrong question. I didn't become anything. I was born this way. Some people are made for light. Others, like me, are sculpted by shadows. You can't fix what isn't broken. The first boy was an accident, or maybe it wasn't. His name was Billy. 15. He came by the shop asking if I had any job openings. I told him I didn't, but offered him a soda and a piece of taffy anyway. He smiled. I smiled back. We talked. He said he liked motorcycles. I said I had one in my garage, if he wanted to see it. And he came with me just like that. The garage smelled of oil and sawdust. I locked the door behind him. He didn't notice. I led him down to the basement. The air was cool and stale. I had already laid down the plastic, just in case. I told him to sit. He did. When I brought out the cord, he looked confused, then afraid. That was the moment I felt it surge. The power. His eyes widened. His mouth opened to scream. I put the rag over his mouth. He struggled. I tied him down. He cried. He begged. I listened, and then I didn't. People talk about murder like it's some grand, dramatic act. But the truth is, it's quiet, intimate, like a secret between two people. I watched the life drain from his face like water down a drain. And when it was done, I felt nothing. No guilt, no remorse, just peace. I buried him in the boat shed. It was easier than I thought. Digging takes time, but time is something I have plenty of. I marked the spot with a nail in the wall, just a small one. My own little gravestone. But here's the thing, one is never enough. Once you've crossed that line, it doesn't pull you back. It pushes you forward. The second boy was easier. Jimmy, 14. I found him wandering near the high school, looking lost. I told him I needed help moving boxes, offered him $5. He followed me home. Same process, same silence. This time, I didn't hesitate. I started collecting souvenirs. A belt, a shoelace, a tooth, little pieces. Memories, reminders of the truth underneath the candy coating of my life. I couldn't keep doing it alone, though I needed help. Someone younger, someone the boys would trust, someone who owed me. That's where David came in. He was a street kid, dirty, angry, broken. I gave him food, money, a place to sleep. He gave me loyalty. And eventually, more than that. You want me to what? He asked the first time. Just bring them here, I said. That's all. He hesitated. But money talks, and so does fear. Soon, he was bringing them regularly. Always boys, always young, always perfect. Wayne, 13. Mark, 15. Danny, 16. One by one, they came and went. Some struggled, some didn't. I kept them for a while, sometimes a day, sometimes a week. It depended on my mood, on what they said, on how they looked at me. But I never rushed. I savored every second. The house became my world, my cocoon, soundproof walls, heavy locks. I installed hooks in the ceiling, a drain in the floor. I kept the box in the corner, always ready. My throne. David watched sometimes. He learned, he didn't ask questions. That's why I trusted him. I knew it couldn't last forever. Nothing this perfect ever does. But I didn't care, because I wasn't living for the future. I was living for the now, for the heartbeat, for the scream, for the silence that followed. They called me Candyman. I liked that. Sweet on the outside, death on the inside. If only they knew the truth. I wasn't a monster. I was an artist, and pain was my masterpiece. The more you do it, the easier it gets. That's what I told David after the fourth one. He had started to flinch, started to look away. He wasn't ready for the full weight of it yet, but I saw the shadow blooming in his eyes. All it needed was time, and a little push. The boy was named Greg, 14, freckles, messy hair, and a gap-toothed smile, like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. David brought him in after football practice, said he was offering weed and a chance to hang out. That was always the trick, boys don't say no to fun. Not when it's wrapped in false friendship. Greg was nervous at first, sitting on the edge of the couch in the back room, fiddling with a thread on his jeans. I watched him from the doorway, arms folded, saying nothing, just watching. They always shift under the silence. Their guilt thinks I can smell it. When I closed the door and clicked the lock, his eyes found the floor. That's the moment they know, even if they don't want to believe it. No one's gonna hurt you, I lied, and my voice was syrup. But I was going to hurt him, and he knew it. David stood against the wall, arms crossed, trying not to tremble. I saw his lip twitch when Greg started to cry. Do you want to leave? I asked Greg softly. He nodded, violently. You can, I said, but only if David helps you. David looked at me. I looked back. This was the moment. The boy's hope hung in the air like mist. Hold him, I said. David hesitated. Then he moved. That was the first time he helped directly. I saw his hands tremble on Greg's arms, but he held on. It took everything in him, but he did it. And when it was over, he didn't cry. He just stared at the floor, breathing like he'd run a mile through smoke. That was the night I knew I had him. Not just as a helper, as an apprentice. The newspaper boys were starting to talk. Missing posters on telephone poles, mothers knocking on doors. But no one ever knocked on mine. I was just Mr. Corll, nice guy, runs a candy company, keeps to himself. That's the beauty of it. If you smile long enough, no one sees the teeth behind it. We moved the bodies when the boat shed started to get full. I had to be creative. Lime, plastic, deep holes in remote places. David helped me dig. He didn't complain anymore. He just worked. He was learning. There were rules. I made them clear. No drugs in the house. No talking to girls about the shed. No bodies upstairs. No names in front of them. We stuck to it for a while. But then came Elmer. David brought him over one night. Said he was cool. Said he could help. Said he was like us. I didn't like the way he smiled too wide. Too much bravado. Not enough fear. He wasn't like us. He was a wild dog with a knife in his teeth. But I let him in. I was curious. We tested him with a boy named Randall. 13, quiet, polite, always said, "Sir Elmer," didn't hesitate. Not once. He tied the kid down himself. I watched from the shadows, arms folded, heart steady. There was something off about the way Elmer laughed. It wasn't joy or madness. It was hunger, different than mine. Less about power, more about cruelty. I didn't trust him, but he was useful. Randall didn't last long. His screams were high-pitched and thin, like a bird stuck in a wire. Elmer covered his mouth with a sock, looked back at me with a grin that never touched his eyes. "He's soft," he said, "like a girl." I almost threw him out right then. But I didn't. We needed bodies, and he brought them. That summer was hot, the kind of heat that makes the walls sweat. The air in the shed was thick and soupy, the smell of bleach and rot. We kept a radio playing old country songs to drown out the moaning. It worked, most of the time. The neighbors never asked questions, or if they did, they never asked me. The boys started blurring together. Names became faces. Faces became numbers. I kept track in a little book, hidden beneath the insulation in the attic. David never asked to see it. Elmer did once. I told him no. He didn't ask again. One day, I came home and found David sitting on the floor of the shed, holding a sock in his hand. He was staring at it like it was a relic. "Do you remember the first one?" he asked. "Billy," I said. He nodded. "I dream about him," he whispered. "Sometimes I see him at the end of the bed, just staring." I sat down beside him. "You're not dreaming," I said. He looked at me, eyes wide. "You're remembering." That seemed to calm him. But something in him had shifted. The killings got messier, more impulsive. Elmer started bringing knives instead of rope. David drank more. I started locking my bedroom door. The balance was slipping. The silence was cracking. But I kept going. Because stopping wasn't an option. Because monsters don't just stop. They wait. They plan. And when they strike again, they do it harder. Because pain is addictive. Because screams are music. Because boys are toys. And all toys break eventually. It was around the 20th boy that the house began to feel alive. It breathed in the night. It whispered in the walls. The pipes moaned like old ghosts. And sometimes, when the wind pushed through the gaps in the windows, it sounded like children crying. I liked it that way. I liked that the house had absorbed their voices, their heat, their final moments. I believed it held on to all of it like a shrine, and I was its high priest. David had grown quieter, more obedient, but also more distant. He did what I asked without questions, but he stopped looking me in the eye. Sometimes I caught him staring at nothing, jaw clenched, like he was trying to hold something down inside. I recognized that look. It was the same one I had after the first time. He was becoming me, but Elmer was becoming something else. He was reckless. Brought boys who were too young, too loud, too risky. One of them, Terry, escaped the ropes, made it halfway up the basement stairs before Elmer tackled him. The boy screamed so loud I thought the neighbors would hear. I slapped Elmer across the face once it was over. "You're going to ruin this for all of us," I told him. He spat blood on the floor and smiled. "Then let's go out with a bang." That night, I didn't sleep. I began to wonder if I should kill Elmer. Quietly, a knife while he was passed out. Or maybe something slower, make it look like an overdose. But he was David's friend. Killing him would mean killing the last sliver of loyalty I had left in that boy. So I waited, watched, planned. We had rituals by then. The way we gagged them, the way we stripped them. Which ropes to use on which wrists. David used to hum while tying knots. Elmer always turned the radio up. I preferred silence. I wanted to hear them, the honesty of it. There was a boy named Alan, 17, broad-shouldered, smarter than most. He didn't cry, not even when I showed him the knife. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You'll burn for this." His voice was steady. It shook me. He lasted 3 days. On the third night, I asked David to kill him. He said no. That was the first time he refused. I did it myself, and I made sure he watched. Afterward, I handed David the sock and told him to clean the blood from the floor. He didn't speak, just nodded, picked up the rag and scrubbed. He didn't stop until his knuckles bled. That's when I knew he still belonged to me. But even slaves break eventually. The next few weeks were slow. We were getting sloppy. Elmer almost got arrested for shoplifting, and David stopped showing up for days at a time. I started doing more myself, luring them in, drugging them, cleaning up alone. I liked it better that way, anyway. Less noise, less chaos. Just me and the boy. Just the two of us in the dark. One of them, Jamie, kept singing a church hymn over and over. Even after I gagged him, he hummed it through the cloth. I hit him, still he hummed. I broke his fingers, still I broke his jaw. The sound stopped, but I could still hear it in my dreams. "You're losing control," David said one night. We were sitting on the back porch, the shed locked behind us. The smell of bleach and death hung on our clothes like a second skin. "I'm in complete control," I told him. "No," he said. "You're not. You're desperate." I stood, pushed him back against the wall. "Say that again," I whispered. He didn't, but his eyes said everything. Elmer was the one who pushed it too far. He brought 2 boys, brothers, 14 and 16. Said they were runaways. Said no one would miss them. Said he wanted to try something new. I didn't want to. 2 at once was risky. But I let him, because I was tired, because I was bored, because part of me wanted it all to end. The boys fought back, hard, broke a lamp, shattered a mirror. One of them bit Elmer so deep he needed stitches. The other grabbed a shard of glass and sliced David's arm open. Blood sprayed across the floor like paint. It was chaos, pure, beautiful chaos. I laughed, for the first time in weeks. After it was over, we burned their clothes, buried their bodies deep, far out in the woods. Took all night. When we came back, the house was cold. Still, like it was watching us, like it was waiting. David didn't come over for 4 days. Elmer disappeared for a week. I was alone. I liked it. But loneliness has a sound, a ringing, a pressure behind the eyes. You start hearing footsteps that aren't there, breathing in the closet, whispers behind your teeth. I started talking to the photos. I had kept some Polaroids, faces twisted in fear, some still alive, some not. I lined them up along the basement wall like a gallery. This one, I'd say, pointing, he lasted the longest. This one begged. This one tried to bite off his own tongue. I began to sleep down there, closer to them, closer to the memory, because memory is all that matters in the end. Not their names, not their screams, but what they gave me, and they gave me everything. The thing about death is, it never fills you. You think it will, the first time. You think that silence, that final stillness will be enough. That once you've held it in your hands, once you've tasted it, you'll be satisfied. But it's a lie, a dirty trick. Death isn't a meal, it's a hunger that grows. And I was starving. The basement had changed. It didn't smell like candy anymore. It smelled like skin and rust. I liked it better that way. Sweetness was for children. This was for men. Sometimes I sat in the dark with the lights off and listened to the pipes. They echoed when no one was moving, made soft, low clicks like bones shifting under floorboards. I liked pretending it was them, my boys still there, still breathing beneath the tiles. I think part of me believed they were. David started avoiding the shed, said he was getting sick. I told him that sickness was weakness, that once you open the door to this life, it never closes. He didn't respond, just looked at me like I was already dead. I think he was beginning to hate me. Good hate keeps people close. Elmer came around less and less, but when he did, he was worse, more violent, less careful. One night, he brought a boy who wasn't from the neighborhood, someone from out of town, a kid who'd hitchhiked in. Elmer didn't even ask me, just dragged the boy in, already half unconscious. I didn't like that. "Where'd you get him?" I asked. "Gas station by the freeway," Elmer grinned. Said he was going to California. I stared at him. "We don't do transients," I said. "No one will come looking, sure, but no one will miss him either, so he doesn't matter." Elmer laughed. "That's the whole point, isn't it?" I walked away. The boy was dead before morning. I didn't help bury him. I didn't even ask his name. They stopped being names long ago. They were just voices, just moments, just skin stretched over silence. I spent more time in the attic, reading the book. My little red notebook, each boy numbered, each one logged. I'd write how they cried, how long they lasted, what they said last. Some of them prayed, some cursed, some begged to be held. Those were the hardest, because sometimes I wanted to hold them too, but not the way they meant. The cops still weren't onto us. The city didn't care. Boys disappeared all the time, especially poor ones. Runaways, street kids, throwaways. That's what I called them, throwaways. Like broken toys left on a curb. Elmer wanted to try a new game, something with chains. I said no. He laughed in my face. David didn't laugh. He just walked out. That night, I dreamed I was back in my mother's house. She was cooking dinner, humming, the smell of roast beef in the air. I walked into the kitchen and the table was set for 20, but the chairs were empty. Only the plates were full of fingers, eyes, teeth. She smiled at me and said, "You always were such a hungry boy." I woke up screaming. That was the last time I slept upstairs. David came back 3 days later, pale and shaking. He had a bag of money and a cut on his cheek. "What happened?" I asked. He didn't answer, just dropped the bag on the kitchen table and said, "Let's go hunting." We didn't talk much after that, just worked. 3 boys in 1 week, too many, too fast. But I didn't care anymore. The silence had started to eat into my skin, and I needed the screams like medicine. The 3rd boy, Jonah, fought hard, strong for his size, almost knocked out Elmer's tooth. That was a mistake. Elmer lost control, beat him with a hammer, not to kill, just to hurt. He liked it when they bled from the ears. Jonah didn't last the night. Elmer fell asleep next to the body, snoring. I watched him for a long time, the moonlight cutting across his filthy face. His boots were still sticky with blood. I had the knife in my hand. I could have ended it right there, but I didn't, because part of me still needed him. Not for the killings, but for the guilt. He carried enough of it to drown a god, and I wanted to watch him sink. That week, David asked me, "Do you ever think about stopping?" I laughed in his face. "Stopping what?" I said. "Breathing." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I saw the crack in him, and I pressed my thumb against it, hard. I used to think I was chosen by something beyond this world, something older than God, deeper than hell. A force that whispered in my ear when I was a child and never stopped. It told me where to find them, when to strike, how long to wait between each kill. A voice like syrup, slow and thick, gentle even. Now, I just think I'm empty. David had changed. His face thinner, his eyes hollow. He stopped helping with cleanup, stopped touching the bodies. He'd sit upstairs and drink while I worked in the basement. Sometimes I'd hear him crying when he thought I wasn't listening. Weakness, but I didn't blame him. It was Elmer I blamed. That little demon was unraveling everything. He'd started bringing people over without asking. Not boys anymore, friends. People our age. 20-somethings with mullets and bad tattoos. They'd sit in my living room, smoking weed and laughing. One of them pissed in my sink. "This isn't a clubhouse," I snapped. Elmer just grinned. "Relax. You need to get out more." I almost stabbed him right there, but I didn't, because I still needed him to bring me boys. And Elmer always knew where to find the broken ones. The next one he brought was different. Quiet, beautiful, in a way that hurt to look at. His name was Curtis, 17, blonde hair like silk. I asked where he was from. He said, "Nowhere that matters. Perfect." But when the time came, when the drugs kicked in and the ropes were tight, I froze. I looked down at him, chest rising and falling, lips parted slightly, and I couldn't move. He looked like my brother, not the one who's still alive. The one who never was. The one I dreamed about when I was 8. The one I buried under the floorboards in my sleep. I turned away. "Kill him," I told Elmer. "What? You heard me." Elmer laughed. "You losing your edge, old man." I didn't answer. He did it. Messy, loud. Curtis didn't scream. He just looked at me, right at me, even while Elmer crushed his windpipe. I didn't sleep that night. The house felt colder than usual, like something had left. Like Curtis had taken it with him. Or maybe like he had been the last one who mattered. David didn't come back for 2 weeks. When he did, he was high out of his mind, barely able to stand. He slumped on the couch and said, "We should kill Elmer." I blinked. "What?" "You heard me," he slurred. "He's gonna get us caught." I poured him a glass of water, sat down beside him. "Why now?" David stared at the ceiling. "Because I saw myself in him, and I hated it." We didn't talk after that, but the plan started forming. The next few boys were routine, like clockwork. Pick up, drug, bind, kill, bury. They all blurred together, names, faces, screams. They stopped meaning anything. I think that's when I knew I was already dead. I just hadn't laid down yet. One of the last boys. I don't even remember his name, just his shoes. Bright red sneakers, the kind that lit up when he ran. They stayed on even when the rest of him was gone. I kept them, put them in the closet. Sometimes I turned off all the lights and tapped them, just to see the little flash of red. It made me feel alive. That's when the nightmares started getting worse. I dreamed of the basement full of water, boys floating face up, eyes open, mouths full of worms. David was always down there, standing knee-deep, whispering to them, telling them about me, about the things I did. And in the dream, I couldn't move, couldn't scream, just stood at the top of the stairs while the water rose. One night, I woke up to find David in the kitchen, holding the red sneakers, just holding them, not moving. I didn't ask, and he didn't offer, because there was nothing left to say. We were ghosts now. The house was the only thing still breathing, and I knew it wouldn't breathe much longer. The silence in the house was different now. It wasn't comforting. It wasn't holy. It was the kind of silence you get in a burned-out church. All the gods gone, all the prayers ash, and something else breathing under the pews, something hungry. David barely spoke. He stopped shaving, stopped sleeping. He looked like a shadow of the boy I met years ago, the one who used to tie knots with humming lips and scared eyes. Now, those eyes were empty. Like mine, I found him in the basement one night, standing beside the drain, staring down into it like it was a black hole swallowing the past. He didn't look at me when he said they screamed the same. What, the boys? No matter how old, how tough, they all scream the same. You noticed that? I didn't answer, because he was right, and because part of me missed the screaming. Elma was getting bold, careless, left fingerprints on duct tape, parked too close to a scene. One time, he didn't even bother to wipe down a knife. I cleaned it myself, hands shaking. He was going to destroy everything. So we decided it would be David's job. Elmer came over drunk 2 nights later, ranting about how he could run this operation better than me. He kicked over a chair, peed in the sink again. When I reached for the knife under the counter, David touched my arm. "No," he said, "I'll do it." I watched from the hallway. Elmer was in the kitchen, laughing. David walked up behind him, calm, quiet. He had a garrote thin wire. It slid over Elmer's neck like a whisper. It didn't take long. I thought I'd feel something, but I didn't. We buried him behind the shed. No words, no marker, just dirt and silence. After that, things changed. For a while, I thought David and I were closer, like 2 wolves after killing the weakest in the pack. We shared meals again, planned together, even joked once or twice. It almost felt normal, but I should have known, because the hunger was still there, and it was turning on me. The next boy was 15. Brown hair, crooked teeth, a scar on his chin like a tiny question mark. His name was Matt. I liked him. He didn't scream, just asked me if I believed in hell. I told him, "You're standing in it." He smiled. That smile stayed with me. For days, I kept his shirt, hid it in a drawer. Sometimes I pressed it to my face and tried to remember how his skin felt. Not in a lustful way, in a possessive way, like he belonged to me, like all of them did. David found the shirt. He didn't say anything, just looked at me like I was diseased. Things spiraled fast after that. One of the boys got loose. 15 minutes of hell, screaming through the vents, running barefoot into the yard before I tackled him. He bit me deep, drew blood. I killed him with my hands. David watched, then threw up in the bushes. "You're losing control," he said again. No, I wasn't. I was control, but I could see it in his face. He was afraid of me now. Good, let him be, because fear keeps people loyal, but not forever. The next week, he didn't show up. The week after that, I got a call from his mother. He'd left town, disappeared. No note, no goodbye, just gone. I searched the house for his scent, for his prints. Nothing. He'd erased himself completely, like he'd never existed. Like he was just another boy in my notebook. I didn't cry, but I screamed, long and loud. The kind of scream that tears the lining of your throat, that cracks the tiles, that makes even the dead shift in their graves. The house echoed it back at me. Then it went silent, and I knew it was over. The hardest thing about killing them is not the act itself, it's the wait. The waiting for the last breath, the last twitch, the final crack of their ribs breaking beneath your hands. The hardest thing is the silence after, when everything goes still. When you sit there and all you hear is your own heartbeat, all you feel is your own skin, and you realize you're the last one left. David's gone. I can still hear him sometimes. That voice in my head. It's not his anymore, though. It's different. A whisper that pulls at my insides, telling me I failed him, that I couldn't save him from himself. But the truth is, he failed. He was weak. It's just me now. Just me and the house. The cold basement. The smell of rot. The weight of every life I've taken. I tried to get rid of the traces, the blood, the evidence, but it never really goes away, does it? I tried to drown it in new boys, more faces, more names, but it wasn't the same anymore. The thrill faded. The blood lost its taste. Every scream felt like a hollow echo bouncing off the walls. I couldn't breathe in the house anymore. The walls closed in. It started to feel like it was watching me, like it knew everything I'd done, every sin I'd committed. I needed to leave, but I couldn't. The house held me. It was a trap, a tomb, and the more I thought about leaving, the tighter it gripped me. One night, I went to the old shed in the backyard, the one where I buried them. It was covered in moss and mildew now, like everything else, but I still remembered each body, each hole I dug. I knelt down by the shed, hands shaking, and started to dig. It was hard at first. The dirt was thick and heavy. I had to fight it, clawing at the earth like it was alive, trying to bury me with it. But then I found it. The box. The little wooden box that held the photos, the notes, the memories of every boy I'd ever taken. They were all there, faces smiling up at me. Faces that didn't know what was coming. Faces that never stood a chance. I stared at the pictures for a long time. I could almost hear their voices again, but it wasn't enough. Nothing ever was. I buried the box again, covered it up. The dirt felt familiar on my fingers, like I was closing a chapter. But the truth was, I was running out of pages. The cops were getting close. I could feel it in my bones. They were asking questions, looking into the missing boys, the ones who'd vanished without a trace. I wasn't scared, though. No, I'd been living with death for so long. I didn't fear it anymore. What I feared was being forgotten. I couldn't let that happen. Not after everything. The final blow was swift. I met a boy at a bar, young, 19, cute, and stupid. He was looking for a ride, maybe a way out of town, maybe a new life. I told him I could help him with that. And just like all the others, he trusted me. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered anymore, because I'd already buried myself. The boy never made it out of the house. I had the rope ready, tied it round his neck, and whispered something soft. Something that felt like a prayer. But it wasn't a prayer, it was a curse. I felt the life drain from him, felt it pull away like the last remnants of my soul. I held on, just a little longer, then it was done. He was just another face in the pile, another boy I would never remember. And just like that, the house fell silent again. But this time, I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. You never know when the end is coming. You never feel it until it's too late. I thought I had control over everything, over every death, every boy, every scream. But control isn't real. It's a lie, a fiction we tell ourselves to feel safe, to feel powerful. The truth is, I was never in control. The house started to feel like a tomb. The walls were closing in, not with the weight of the past, but with something else, something alive, something that had been waiting. I tried to leave once. I packed my things, just a suitcase with the bare minimum, a coat, a few shirts, the keys to the house. But when I stepped outside, I couldn't breathe. The air was thick. It clung to me like fog, like something pressing down on my chest. I went back inside. I think I knew, deep down, that I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until everything was finished. The police were getting closer. They'd been to the house, asked questions. They had a few names, a few faces. They were starting to piece it together. But I wasn't worried. I knew they couldn't touch me. Not yet. I still had one last thing to do. I waited for the knock. It came on a cold Tuesday night. A sharp knock at the door. The kind you don't ignore. The kind that means they've found you. They've finally come for you. I opened the door. 2 officers stood there, both young, one with a beard, the other with a sad, tired look in his eyes. "We need to talk to you," the bearded one said. I nodded. "Come in." They stepped inside, looking around like they were trying to read the air. They didn't sit, just stood by the door, hands in their pockets. "About the missing boys," the tired one said. "We've been tracing their steps. We have reason to believe you know something." I didn't say anything, just watched them, watched their eyes flicker. They were trying to see if I was lying, trying to figure out if I was guilty. They wouldn't know the truth, not yet. I could feel the sweat building on the back of my neck, the tension in the air, the smell of death lingering in every corner. They couldn't smell it though. It was a smell only the guilty recognize. One of the officers pulled out a photograph of boy, one of the missing ones, a face I didn't recognize. He showed it to me. "Do you know him?" I stared at the photo. The boy was smiling, his eyes bright, unaware of the horror awaiting him. "I don't know him," I said. "Sorry, they didn't believe me." Of course they didn't. The bearded officer stepped forward. "You don't have to lie anymore. We know what you've done." That's when I felt it. That cold, sharp thing in my chest. The thing that had been growing, feeding on me for so long. It wasn't fear. It wasn't panic. It was something worse. It was regret. I never wanted to be caught. Never wanted the world to know what I'd done. But standing there, with them staring at me, I felt something break inside. Something that had been holding me together for years. Maybe they knew. Maybe they had everything. Maybe they were just waiting for me to confess. And I wanted to confess. I wanted to say it all, everything. To tell them the names, the faces. To tell them how many boys I'd taken. To tell them why. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because the truth is, I was never sorry. I never cared. I did what I did because it was the only thing that made sense. The only thing that filled the emptiness. The officers didn't arrest me right away. They left, told me to stay put. I could hear them talking in the hallway, their voices muffled. I sat down on the couch, waited, stared at the walls. I could feel it, the silence. It was heavier now. It wasn't just the house, it was me. I thought about David, about Elma, about all the boys, about how none of them ever mattered. And I laughed. I laughed because I realized none of it mattered anymore. I wasn't going to die in this house. No, I was going to die in the shadows, just like they did. When the officers came back, they were ready. They had the cuffs. They had the questions. The eyes full of pity and disgust. But I didn't care anymore, because I was already dead.